way, I think that's how Trump got elected. It was just the wrong person to be there. I think people, on the right felt that way. It's time. I'm sure, Paul, Brian, you've heard this for years. I've heard it. I guess I first became political in '68. I've heard it since then. Government should be run by a business. We need a businessman there. Well, I hope this ends that. Okay,
Yeah,
granted, he's not
it's
much of
that
a
Kennard,
business.
right? It's that one.
Yeah, but I don't know if any, the problem becomes, and Brian, to pay due respect to your concern, what I would, and touch a little bit on what you just said, Paul. One of the areas I do have some expertise is in the media, because I was a journalist for a long time now, I'm back being a writer, but we don't have an authority figure, or we don't have a statesperson right now. So let's look at Nixon. Really, the person who put I don't want to use a cliche, who actually finally got through to Richard Nixon, from everything that I've read and some reporters I've talked to who covered that, was Barry Goldwater. And Goldwater and a couple other senators went in, and Mr. Nixon, I can't do a good Richard Nixon, I wish I could, imitation. He said, well, I have some support, right, and I'll be there. And Barry said, supposedly said, I wasn't there, said, well, sir, I count 2 votes in the Senate, and one of them is not mine. And that was the moment for Nixon that it came crumbling down, that, yeah, I can't survive this thing. I think Trump will have that moment. The problem, Brian, you addressed. Who would be the Barry Goldwater, that could convince Trump? No one. Ivanka, maybe?
No, they're going to find Borks out there. That's what they're going to find, in my opinion.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, so that's key. But I think at some point, okay. Naive though this
I don't
may be.
know why I sound like you're Pollyanna, but it seems like everybody seems to think, oh, well, this thing will end well in the end, because it always kind of has. But
no, Brian, what it will do, it will end. We don't know if it will end well. It may end in the destruction of the world as we know it.
Which is a possibility.
I don't think so. My opinion of the military has changed dramatically since I've lived in D.C. As a child of Vietnam, I always thought greatly or highly of the warriors. I was completely suspect of anybody above lieutenants. And you get a chance. We live right next to the Pentagon, so you get a chance to meet a lot of military officers. I've talked to them. Very bright. I think again, would they stage a military coup? No, but I think there's people that will say no.
Well, Mattis had to have said something to him about his comment about Russia be ready, because that was just, it must have infuriated him, because Trump pulled back, right? Didn't he? I mean, he toned it down.
Yeah,
2 days later, he toned it down. So somebody had to have said something.
If what they say is true, and when they say, people that report from the inside, leakers reporting to papers, if what they say is true, that this, imagine this. This is supposedly literal. He's made a decision in a room. He's going to walk to the next room and announce it. He stops. He sees something on TV, and he changes his mind. So I think when you say and then somebody said last word, I don't know. I just don't think Trump he doesn't have the ability to lead. We know that. So what does he do? Brian, I'll get back to you. Do you think, we don't have the answer. Do you fear Trump causing a nuclear war?
No, I don't fear that, because I know he wants his own survival, but I think that inherently with his beliefs about the environment, or lack of beliefs, people like Pruitt, that's going to destroy us. This is something that Paul and I have constantly banged home on almost every reality report, is about this complete disregard for the environment and regulations. That is the scary part for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I go along with Brian in that. That's the frightening part for me too. We're ramping up. We're stepping up the ante on the accelerated destruction of the earth by mankind.
Paul, do you think we're past the point of no return? And people do believe that. I'm not.
I'm not an environmental scientist, but Guy McPherson certainly thinks we are. A lot of people think we are, but we're definitely at the point where we're going to need some geoengineering.
Which is being done anyway, just naturally. Geoengineering is being done, just not wanting to do it or specifically do it. We're doing it without even knowing it. We've geoengineered this planet. So it's got to be done.
Right.
It's-
We've geoengineered in a negative way. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Let's
we need
get
the
back
young
to
people. We need the young people to. I hate to say it. We need the young people to geoengineer our way out of this mess.
well, you know what? You're laughing, but you're probably right on the money. I mean, that's probably true. I mean, so my take on that would be unless we're over the edge now, and we don't know, the three of us, we're not scientists. We all have our concerns. And if indeed a number of scientists, the majority of whom I would assume, if 97 or 99% believe in some type of climate change or global warming, are going to run, and a few of them get elected, suddenly I don't know, do we have any scientists in Congress right now? I know we have a lot of lawyers and a couple preachers, but
Not
I
on
don't
our
think we
side.
do.
I mean,
No,
as a
all right.
doctor, and look, I mean, he's not. I mean, he's in Trump's administration. Carson, he's a nut. He's an absolute
Well,
nut. But
of
no,
course.
there's nobody who's really a scientist. I
But
mean,
now suddenly, so we get a half dozen.
Better chance of there being Scientologists, David. Than
right.
Yeah,
You can't even elect an
I think
atheist.
you're right on the money.
Not
there.
even in Congress can you. The last atheist to be elected in Congress was Barney Frank, I believe. You can't even find that. So atheists are a threat to Republicans, and apparently scientists are, because they've gone after people like Bill Nye and a few others. You can't even mention climate change within the EPA. It's horrible with this Pruitt.
But look what Mr. Pruitt is doing, okay? He's destroying, he's destroying, but he's not going to make it. He can't. Trump is going to have to jettison him.
I don't
the next
agree.
person
I
could be
think
worse.
he loves Pruitt.
It could be, but every time that happens, every time, somebody on the fence, where I hope, I didn't vote, Trump doesn't see that bad. Wait a minute, he says he's going to get the best people, and now he's replacing everybody? What's up with that? Why does Scott Pruitt get to ride first class and get protection because somebody in coach said something nasty to him? I think that's what we have to hope. Now we won't know.
Are you talking about the voting, the Republicans who voted for him that all of a sudden are going to have this cognitive dissonance? They're the ones who they believe in a theme park at the end of their lives. They believe in the simplest thoughts that they could watch Sean Hannity and the next minute that's their entire philosophy.
True.
Like Trump. So how do you expect them to be any different than Trump?
Let's look at the optimistic side. If we want to draw sides, we're going to say, I'm assuming we're saying three of us are anti-Trump. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
And that would lead us to be anti-Republican for the most part.
At this point,
not necessarily
now.
Democrat. We could be anything else. But so we'll pick that up. All right. So we go into.
And by the way, can I interrupt one? And we can say that we're not even absolutely, anybody watches, we're not absolutely Democrats either. You don't call yourself a Democrat.
No, I said that.
Okay.
I want that to be clear. I mean, I put that in almost all my posts because the automatic assumption is, or the labeling is, well, you're for.
You're a liberal Democrat if you don't like Trump.
Yeah, no, it's not that. So we look at this. We enter an election. We go into it. What was far and away the leading cable news network?
Well,
Ratings wise. Entering the election.
If you're going to go with one network as far as viewership, Fox, but that's one network.
Absolutely.
That's all they have.
So now, what is the number one network viewer-wise?
Right now, I think it's MSNBC now.
That is correct. Now, before we get too excited over that, we have Sinclair looming out there, who've taken over all the stations. But even there, you're beginning to see little rebellions of people saying, I'm not going to do this. It's not worth my job. It's not worth my integrity. It's not worth this, okay? The economic boycott. Look at Laura Ingraham, okay? Okay, I'm going to mouth off. And suddenly, out of 14, 11 pulled, one has come back. I forget which one. One of them who pulled came back for, and we're going to, that's, but there's some things, again, I don't want to put too much, Paul, like you said, I'm with these young people too. But, they have a tremendous burden, but they're smarter. They're much smarter. I mean, I was an activist in the 60s, and they're much smarter. They know how to use the social media. I thought it was pathetic.
That's good.
With Congress, when Mark Zuckerberg goes up there and he had to tell, I think there were congressmen I questioned him and didn't even know how to turn a computer on.
Right.
That was my
The
take
very
on it.
second they asked their second question or reply, they were done. They couldn't even.
Yeah.
stand
And these young people, I think it was effective. Obama is credited or blamed, whichever you want to do, with the first president to use social media to bypass the old time media. And he did. Trump is an expert at it. In terms of, he really doesn't need the press. Okay, so if that's where the fight's going to be, those young kids can outdo them.
Excellent point. Excellent point. What was the name of the young man from the school that got into the tiff with Ingram again? What was
David Hogg.
Yeah. I mean, look at the effective job he did. Wow.
And see, the other thing is, and Brian, you're going to say this is naive, so Paul, you're going to be the tiebreaker in this one. I have a theory. It's just my personal theory that I'm going to support. That in the end, and I don't mean the end of times, that evil runs its course and is balanced out. Okay? And I think what may be happening is we are pushing, or they're being pushed, or they feel they're being pushed to the edge. You do not do target practice as one person did with that, with John Hope. You don't do that. He set up a picture and shot it. It's out there. Even the most hardened people begin to say, "Wait a minute, there's a line somewhere there, Brian." And you're absolutely right. They've crossed so many, but I still think there's a line there. And I think Trump is incapable of not crossing that line.
Well, perhaps
I really do.
I can just say perhaps maybe my negativity comes out in my travels to Russia, and a lot of it's influence. I see a lot of smart young people. At least I haven't been there for a while, but in my communications with people up to this week, they have that there, but they cannot do anything about it. They simply there's no way to get it, and I fear that we're headed toward this king, and as long as
in America, king in America,
right? As long as the congressman, they kind of know the right. They knew that there was a browning of America. They knew that the votes were going to change, and still Clinton had 3 million more votes. They see the writing on the wall, so now they're going to go. They're just going to go for it now. That's my opinion. I hope I'm wrong.
So basically, David, it seems to me that I think you are and I are in agreement. I think Trump is incapable of not crossing that line, to use your words. But right. Brian seems to believe there's some kind of Russian Deus Ex Machina or something that's going to swing down and keep Trump operating. And I think we could still beat that, Brian. I think it's going to catch up. I mean, the depth of turmoil in his administration we've seen. How long has he been in now? For a year? I mean,
450 days, something like that.
He can't maintain this for a full term. There's no way.
Oh, I think he will. I don't see any movement yet from the Republicans. In fact, I'm sure he's going to fire Rosenstein, and and he has no reason to do it. He has no reason to do it. He's going to fire Rosenstein, and they're going to do nothing about it. And once they do nothing for Rosenstein, that's when I believe they're not going to do anything for Mueller. And look, they even know that the issue with Michael Cohen's been moving to the state courts. It has nothing to do with Mueller right now, but still there's that fear, and they may be so afraid of Trump that they'll actually do the wrong thing. I expect them to do the wrong thing there. The only time they didn't was during the Nixon administration, just like Dave said. But this is a different group. You can't tell me you have seen Jim Jordan. I mean, I'm getting upset now because I hate. It's not you guys. You've seen Jim Jordan and David Nunes, and you're telling me that these guys are going to change.
No, Brian.
Nunes.
We're not telling you they're going to change. Nunes has one vote. Would you agree? Every person in Congress has one vote, and it's one by one. 31 or 34, whatever the number is, who voted before are gone. That does not mean they won't be replaced with 34 Republicans, right? But it's going to be new people, new voting. If you really want the beauty of the American system versus some of the others, versus Mr. Putin's, there it's absolute power. I still believe that America is different. Now, my concern, Brian, yours is the environment. I share that.
And Paul, you agree with
my concern is money. Money
Yeah.
is what
Yeah,
money is what's scary.
The new nuclear red button is the environment. There's no question about it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you've got this money. Now, how do you get the money out? Well, you get people in who somehow don't need the money. Right now, that's those kids. They're not running. Did you see
but
it in
do you
Kansas?
see like a Democratic badass that can actually go against it? I don't see it. Who's out there? I mean, I know I like Kamala Harris, but she gets shut down because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And I don't see an LBJ out there. I don't see somebody sticking their neck out and it's like some of that one congressman who called him a shit given. That's about it. I mean, Eric Holder maybe. I just don't see it. Where do you see it? You gonna say you think I keep thinking Henry, Bernie Sanders, even.
Well, the statue hasn't yet been toppled, Brian. So we have to see who comes out, who the hero.
Right.
Who the hero.
Well, somebody has to take him out. Somebody has to go on a vicious tirade against this guy. You have to have badass against badass. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, first of all, and again, we're assuming, and we're probably right in assuming that. Let's assume that Trump does survive to run again. I think there'll be a Republican challenge to Trump. Now, can that be beaten? Probably not. But that siphons off more. I think, again, we'll go back to the election. I tell people not to go back, but let's look at it. This is my take on it, right through wrongfully. Okay, so there are 17 Republicans running, correct?
Yeah. Well, we know Kasich, the big one.
Trump emerges. This is meaningless, my statement, but I'm going to make it anyway. Hillary Clinton, who I did not think was a strong candidate, or as strong as a candidate as you could field, although she certainly had expertise for the job, but she had all the ties of coming from the Clintons. She would have beaten 16 of those. I believe that to be true.
Well, they wouldn't have cheated, I don't think.
I don't. You know what, Brian? It's funny. I was all upset about that cheating. What I'm upset about is the fact that there are people in government who don't seem to be upset about the fact, and maybe that's just my old, I was okay with the communists aren't that bad when we were in the Cold War because I knew the people weren't that bad. But this was bad, okay?
Right.
This is another foreign government coming in trying to dictate to America. And you can't do that. I don't think you go in and bomb, and I don't know what you do, but you certainly just sit there, it doesn't matter. But even having said that, I don't think they actually won the election for Trump. I think Hillary and her people, maybe not Hillary, were overconfident. They didn't go into the states. There's really 3 states that cost them, right? Pennsylvania, Michigan, that area. It was all that. It's interesting everybody's take. We're all in the last minute. Today I was listening to people, and like I said, I'm at this Bruce Springsteen academic conference, which is kind of interesting. And of course, Donald Trump comes up. Donald Trump comes up everywhere. It doesn't matter. 2 points I just thought were interesting there. One was some people were asking, Springsteen has been very politically active recently, right? Campaigned for Kerry, campaigned for Obama, did not campaign for Hillary, right? Make of it what you will. Chose a rather downer song to play the one night, the Philadelphia rally that he was there. So people are saying, what did he know or not know, or not any more than that. But the idea, he's not really speaking out in this Broadway show, against him. The other thing is, he also was interesting, and he was also a spokesperson for the working class. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, I'm not trying to make him some kind of god, but it's interesting. He's never worked a day in his life, and he writes about his father who did work very hard. And so we get back to saying, what are you saying? I'm saying we need a candidate, not Bruce Springsteen. Understand what I'm saying? But we need someone who can appeal in the way he does, that has the right social conscience, the right feeling, but also doesn't alienate that working class. And that person was not Hillary in that, which against Donald Trump. So does that mean anybody else can take him? No. But I think it's, we just can't look at it. I mean, Donald Trump came out of nowhere, right? And let's use a cliche here that's almost accurate. Give the devil his due. It's like I used to say about Chris Christie. Chris Christie was a horrible governor, but he kind of emasculated the NJA, which I worked with and for, and he's very powerful. Trump did something amazing. Whether the Russians handed it to him, whatever, he won an election that most people did not think he could win, including Donald Trump did not think he could win. And he did. What that proves is we need to find our own, or those of us, we need to find our own Donald Trump, which is basically, Brian, what you were saying.
But he or she has to be a badass. Elizabeth Warren may be tough, what she says, but she doesn't come across as a badass.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I like, when they go low, we go high. Okay. Now the person saying that, Hillary, couldn't go high. Okay, because she had too much baggage.
Right. She had a lot of baggage.
Do you?
So what about Michelle Obama then? What do you guys think about her?
Michelle?
Yeah.
She should have been president before Barack.
Yeah,
She's an attorney, number one, so she has an understanding of law. She's a Democrat, number two. She's a female, number three. She's African American, number four. She's got things that can attract voters, but that's not going to attract Republicans.
She's got fire, though. She's got fire.
She's really nice, and I get that, but that was my problem with Obama. Is he was too nice those first 2 years. Merrick Garland. We could have had Merrick Garland, but he was too nice. He played by the rules on everything, and I guess that's nice.
There's a difference, Brian. I would submit to you, and maybe we can get Barack. Maybe you can get Barack on the show because I'm going to speak for him now. You have to take into consideration that Barack was breaking a barrier that the three of us can't even understand, and that's to become the first African American president of the United States. I think he was limited by that. I think he also, there were a lot of things, and I did this. I was very guilty of this. I thought Barack Obama could do a lot more than Barack Obama maybe was capable of doing. Forget the race, or forget the blackness for a moment. He really hadn't been tested, right? He made a couple speeches. I think his best speeches, if you go back and look at it, David Marinus, who covers him, says Barack doesn't see himself as a politician. He sees himself as a writer, an academic. So, when you don't have that fire, Brian, you're saying that, maybe he was too nice. He just life came. I think one of the things, if I were going to fault Barack, and again, it wasn't the time, now maybe the time, he was a very heavy marijuana smoker when he was young, as many of us were, some still are. And, I think, I found that a little hypocritical. But, you have to play the game when you're in Washington. He will go down as a very great president for two reasons in history. Three. One, no credit for being the first black president. That will be singled out. But secondly, I think he will go down as a great president compared to Donald Trump. He's sandwiched between a bunch of presidents. I've lost. Bill Clinton is the only president of recent times that I've been in his presence, and by in his presence, I saw him speak in a gym in Reno, Nevada. And Judy and I still talk about that. There was a physical, palpable, feeling presence that came out of that man, and that was from a distance. And they say people got to him closer, he could just do that. However, as a man, he left a little bit to be desired, okay?
Absolutely.
In this Me Too. And we tend, and I will give this, I don't like the memes and stuff, but I think Democrats, or I think liberals, I consider myself, an uber liberal, not a Democrat, gave him more in the past than maybe we should have. But we've kind of been awakened. And I think Brian, too, not like picking on you, but just driving the point home. We're really in a new world. Now, let's think about this, okay? We're having this conversation when Trump gets elected. Okay, let's say we are. What's happened since then? Me Too, right? First time kids standing up, scientists coming out. And this, I think, is really underplayed. I think, it is. One day after Donald Trump's election, the largest known protest in the history of the world occurs, led by and basically from women, correct? A lot of stuff puts us in a new world. It's sort of like, again, I hate to, live well in that past, but one of the problems with that period, I was talking about earlier, and we'll move it back a little bit. So say from the night the Beatles, February 9th, 1964, let's make it a 10-year span until Nixon retires. People were really having a hard time adjusting to that world. It was so new, and things were coming at them left and right. And I think we're in another one of those. And that time, so I mean, I think it's really hard to say politics in the own ways. And I don't want to dominate this conversation, but Brian kept me out for so long. So Paul, I'll let you in on it. But one that really struck me, we're all struck by what we're struck by, right? When we first got back from Atlanta, I was at the museum, and Glenn Thrush, who I don't know if you know who Glenn is, he was a reporter, who is a reporter for the Washington Post. And at the time, he was covering the White House. And Glenn, in my estimation, is an outstanding reporter. He really is, not because he works for the New York Times. I mean, they hire some of the best. And
so Washington Post, you said Washington Post, right? Or is it Times or Post?
New York Times. He was with New York Times.
I have a subscription to that now. I read it a lot.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was, so I'm sitting there. Now, that's when it really hit me for the first time. I'd been away. Now I'd been to hundreds. Literally hundreds of talks at the museum. And it was something, and this guy got up and started on this right-wing diatribe. And Glenn said, basically, you're an asshole, sir. And he didn't use the sir part. And I thought, man, is that, I mean, we didn't used to do that as reporters. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. But that was like my first indication that this media war is going to be different. And Paul, you were saying, look, there's not a reporter alive, even at Fox News, who wouldn't want to find the secret to topple a president. Okay? Who are the two most known reporters in our lifetime?
Right.
Woodward and Bernstein. And they will tell you, I've talked to both of them, they will tell you quite honestly, all they did was report the news. Well, that's not quite true, but I mean, it's pretty much that. So, yeah, that's the ultimate. There used to be a joke. You never argue with a man who buys, who buys ink by the barrel, meaning a publisher. And this idea of media control, it's only up to a certain extent. You don't think, I think Sean Hannity is no more a newsman than the dog you used to have. Right?
Our show is better than his.
The dog actually was smarter. Sean's playing, Sean, like I know him, Sean's playing a role. Bill O'Reilly's playing a role. But there are news people in all those organizations that if they're handed that story, will get it out. You know what I mean? So I mean, every day, like Paul said, this is every day. It's like I wake up, I get my copy of the Washington Post, and Judy said, well, what do you do overnight? I mean, it's literally that way, So we can't continue. He can't continue. If, where's Ivanka? Where's Jared? Where's, where's Melania and all this? I don't mean where are they?
Right, but there's still Breitbart. There's still these fake news organizations, the National Enquirer, causing a lot of, because it doesn't even have to be real. They can just make this shit up. And
I'll use, I'm gonna say fake news is my environment, environmental cause. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but yeah, if we don't get some handle on this, but the other side is the difference is we're aware of it. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say is it spreads faster through social media, but it's always been there. It's always, I mean, there were people who, we laughed at them, but they got their weekly world news out on while they're waiting to get their groceries. Oh yeah, they're aliens. I know that, So, but now it just, is there? It's like, okay, Steven Pinker, you and I have argued about this, Brian.
Right.
Pinker, who's a very smart Steven Pinker, says we're living in the safest, best times in the history of the world.
Right.
And there's this. So why do we feel we're not? Everything. I used to use this argument, which I think is interesting. When I was a reporter locally for South Jersey, okay. I have this question. Brian, I'm going to ask it of you just because I like to put you on the spot. How many murders in Philadelphia occur in South Jersey?
How many murders in Philadelphia occur in South Jersey?
What number would you have to tell me?
0.
Exactly. Yet every night, people would sit in Bridgeton, New Jersey, and watch the first 3 murders of Philadelphia and go lock their doors and their guns. Now, it's wider than that because we're everywhere affects everything. And you can make that argument that's a good thing, or it's a
I get that. You're right about that because it sends fear. But
and that again. And I hope we can get Mr. Trump on someday, or he'll meet me. I go out to the White House periodically. He never shows up for me, but I just like to ask him, what's this thing with hate and anger and fear?
That's his voting base, Dave.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Okay. So don't you have any positive emotions, Mr. No?
But he loses base.
And what are they fearful? I was arguing with one of my former students, and it was interesting. Now, follow this logic because I can't. All right, he's definitely pro Second Amendment, beyond the pale, and he posted something. Of course, I always reply to him. Something about like in the effect of. First of all, nobody's going to take your guns. But I said, let's assume. I said nobody's going to take your guns, but let's assume they did. Let's assume they're coming forward. Do you have a tank? Do you have, air-to-air missile? Do you have, whatever? I mean, military.
Right, the government can put you out if they wanted to. All they do is put some chemical warfare. You're done.
But here's what was
Guns
interesting.
won't do anything for you.
And here's where you get into how do you convince someone? He said, oh no. The military wouldn't do that. Well, who's going to come take your guns if it's not the military?
Right.
So, the Census Bureau is going to come around and take them? I mean, I don't think so. So that's part of the problem. More than fake news, or as much as fake news, is a fake sense of what can happen. Nobody, look, I will go on record. If I had the power and I would take every single gun in the world away from everybody. But that's not going to happen. So you're back to a fear. I mean, I think it's a fear of things that aren't going to happen. And Paul, you said something earlier that triggered a thought for me too. Is this idea of whether we like it or not, America is going to change. Okay, and one of the changes is white American males are not going to be able to gather enough votes to be in control. They are not. Okay, women live long. I mean, every statistic. Minority, it's not minority families.
They have to be counted, Dave. And this is what I say when they're going to get involved with the census. And this is what, again, it's Machiavellian, but I don't see any, right now, I don't see any end to this lying, this shameful behavior of the Republican Party. I know what you both think, and you're both probably right. Because if you look at the continuum...
Well, don't give in. Don't give in that easily.
All right.
I don't know that I'm right.
Right now, I'm in the moment, and I'm going to play in the moment, because that's the way I live my life, in the moment. Right now, on April 14th,
right.
I don't see it change. It has not changed now. I'd be if the vote ended right now, I'd win, because that's just the way it is.
And I have nothing other than to say this: the world changes so quickly, people change so quickly. Well, let me ask you this question, Brian: if the vote were held tomorrow, all right, this is it's like if the sun were blue, it's not. But if the vote were held tomorrow, same two people, Hillary and Trump. Do you think Donald Trump would win again? Tomorrow.
Everything. I don't think so.
And I agree with you.
I don't think so either. I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't think so.
And what we're saying, Brian, why do I have a picture of you on my screen of you taking a picture?
That's not me.
No, I know. But I mean, that's
there you go.
Okay, we're going to move off this topic just a little bit, and then I got to go. My wife is throwing things at me. But
hi, Judy.
She's asleep, actually. I lied. She can sleep through this. I don't know.
Am I able to share a picture here on this?
I'm sorry, what?
Am I able to share a screen on this three-way thing going here?
Yeah.
I wish when I'm with Brian you wouldn't use the term three-way, but go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying to share. I want to show something here.
There you go.
Got the three of us, and I've got.
You guys see this? You guys see this?
No.
It'll be there in a second, Dave. It's a 7-second delay.
Okay.
Not on Skype, on the reality report.
It's the little guy from Skype. I see him.
Yeah, do you guys see this Tiananmen Square
thing? If you were on the reality report, you'd see a picture of the guy standing in front of the tank at Tiananmen Square.
Okay.
So
I'm familiar with that picture.
Okay, so it's a famous picture, Dave, but I think this is why we don't need to fear the government. Because what happens is you get the people will attack their own only to some extent. At some point they stop. And here is the prime example of it right here. Where the lone man can stop the tanks.
I think you're on, and I think too, again, if we want to bring it back, to a moment, in time, the attack, the National Guard at Kent State, That went bad from so many reasons, right? But that was a turning point too. It's one thing to theorize. It's one thing for Donald Trump to sit there and I can call out the militia. I can do this. It's another when you're fighting your own people. How brave are you? And again, statistically, what's the statistics? Brian, you might have it better. I should, because that's my pet peeve, Second Amendment and misunderstanding of it. But I think it's something like the majority of the guns are held by less than 10% of the people.
Yeah, it's a small amount,
Who own multiple guns?
And most people really don't care if people have an actual gun or anything.
No. And the other thing, and someday we'll take up the Second Amendment, but again, living in D.C., what people fail to realize, so this is to any people out there who fail to realize this, the first case that started all this was D.C. versus Heller, okay? And what happened was, Brian, to somewhat give credence to what you did, actually the libertarians looked for someone to bring up the case, and they found this guy, Heller. But here was the problem. Again, government stupidity. D.C.'s law at the time was you may have a gun, right? You may have a gun for defense, but you may not have a loaded gun. And so the case, while it's interpreted that you have the right to have, it's really you have the right to defend yourself with a gun. But Judge, Anton Scalia wrote the majority opinion. And in there, and I heard him speak twice before he died, and he said it both times, it does not mean that you can't have restrictions. Now, to your point, Brian, the NRA says you can't, but the NRA is not the government. The NRA is not the Supreme Court.
I disagree. I am not so sure they aren't the government right now.
No, the Koch brothers have more power than the NRA.
You believe that?
Scalia was an arch conservative, right, Dave? I mean,
they have the money. Sheldon Adelson, the guy who just paid, and I hope he got his money's worth. The guy who paid $1.6 million, the Republican, to silence, the Playboy affair that I think actually he, if I remember correctly. I shouldn't say remember, if I read it correctly, it was a pregnancy and he paid 1.6. Right. Maybe Donald Trump, if you think about that in those terms, maybe Donald Trump is a good businessman. It cost the Republican 1.6, the fundraiser, and he did it for $130,000. So maybe that is good. My only disappointment, I'm going to leave you guys to continue.
And he did, but it wasn't his money.
Well, that's true. It wasn't. Trust me, it wasn't probably any of their money.
Right, it's probably ours. So I don't know where we're laughing.
But I'll just share the most recent disappointment I had, and Brian, I'm going to hold you personally accountable because I don't think you were sent me the money. So I'm out and we're out in Las Vegas, Judy and I, and Las Vegas is a great walking city. We don't gamble, so we're just walking around. And I saw, there's every sign there is giant. So why would I say giant sign? And it's one of the greatest signs I've seen recently. It said, "Tonight, Stormy Daniels look-alike contest." $5,000 in prizes. Special guest DJT. That what they're going to have obviously was a Trump impersonator. Now, I have no puritanical aversions to going to strip clubs. I have no problem with that. But I said, if I'm going to do this tonight, I said I want to do this first class. So I went back and I looked, and you talk about money or how out of whack we are. I just thought this was very telling. So I looked. Now, this is not because they were having the Stormy Daniels look-alike contest. This was not because Stormy Daniels was going to be there. On any given night in this particular gentleman's club, to get VIP treatment, it cost you $6,700.
Wow.
Now, so my point, it's a joking point, but yeah, money's a problem no matter where we are. Somebody pays $6,700. Even if they have it is wrong. The Koch brothers buying people are wrong. So what we have to hope, and I'll leave this with this thought, young people, scientists, women, minorities, immigrants, all the people that Trump's people hate, they're going to save. And we can help them, as being white, white males. I think our time, our time as a group is coming to a close. But that doesn't necessarily mean America's time is coming to a close. It just means that one day, somebody said, 20 by 2050, some say 20. We'll wake up and it'll be a different America. And all we can do is when we go to bed tonight, we can do our little part. And again, I want to congratulate both of you guys for doing it. I think it's great. Everybody can do their part. And don't underestimate, Brian and Paul. Don't underestimate. Okay, so you have what? 14 watchers, 20, I don't know, whatever number it is. And they probably all agree with you already. But, everything starts small. And so maybe somebody will see this show and say, I want to do that. And somebody else says, well, I want to do that. And suddenly the word spreads. So keep up the good work, gentlemen.
Just remember global warming, though, okay? You may not get to 2050, okay?
No, I'm living. I've already been told I'm living to be 112.
Dave, you triggered a thought. Can you imagine if the three of us were walking down the street, say in an urban area or something, or probably an African American would assume that we're three typical white Republicans. We fit the demographic.
Yeah, and again,
it would be totally wrong. That's what's so funny.
But I think, Paul, that's part of what we need, and I don't know exactly how we do it. I think through education. I think some things I think we all have a tendency, to do that. You are black, so you must believe this. You are male. You are female. I think. I know in Bridgeton a black policeman shot a black victim, but that doesn't happen much. So, there's that idea of, but now all white people do not hate all black people. All black people are not on welfare. I mean, all these things that people bring to this conversation, again, Brian accused me of being a Pollyanna. But I mean, if we can ever do this, the world will be a better place. Never be perfect. We're always, as human beings, we're always looking for the differences. And yet, there are more similarities than differences. It's just we obsess on the differences, we fear the differences, we hate the differences, all that kind of. But I mean, we'll leave with Mr. Mark Twain tonight. I'm feeling a Mark Twain mood, and I don't know the exact quote, and I don't like people who quote, but basically, paraphrasing what he said, "It is impossible to be prejudiced with widespread travel." And I think if I had a problem that I would like to say to many Americans, it's get the hell out of your country and go see some other things. Or even go get out of your country, Paul. Even like picking on what you
don't pick up a book while you're at it.
Again, are there sections in D.C. I might not walk through? Yeah, well, of course, there's sections everywhere. But, go somewhere else. Okay, here's one. If you think not to you guys, but I'm saying, anyone thinks all black people, go sit in a black church. Okay? Just go, I assume that's relatively safe.
I've been in one.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, think about, we don't. What's the old saying? The most segregated day of the week is Sunday. And there's probably some truth to that. But the idea of it is, and I guess, Brian, we both taught in Bridgeton. And, Bridgeton's my home. It's not yours. You came from that rich section, rich place called Cherry Hill with billions of dollars. You come down there and, you put your, but the idea of it is, did you ever any day feel unsafe in Bridgeton High School?
Never. And
I never did. And people, my wife, Judy, worked downtown Bridgeton, was there all hours. I was there. The only two things that ever happened in the city of Bridgeton outside of the high school, once a person asked me for $1 in the parking lot of then the Evening News. And one time, one of my former students who was mentally disturbed was going through the city, and I had to call the police on him before the other officers. But you didn't see that. And again, this is a reality report. Well, I said I was going to end this. Okay, we need to get back to some reality. It's a perception. Bridgeton, for example, is perceived as an extremely dangerous place. Would you agree with that, Brian?
As is Toledo, to a certain extent.
A lot of places. Do you realize where the safest place in Bridgeton is? At the intersection of the two main streets, Commerce and Laurel. My point being that, we associate things with with the high school. I'm sure you had that ask. You go, people say, you go to Bridgeton High School? Oh my God, you go there. And I just look at him and say, look, I'm stuck on myself. I love myself. Do you really think I'd go somewhere where there was danger? but people believe, and again, it's because we look at each other as different when we're more the same. Gentlemen, have a good one. We'll talk later.
Dave, thank you for joining.
Okay, dude. So yeah, we'll all sign off. We'll end it. You think, Brian? We might as well
Yeah,
end
and
it now,
I'll
right?
see you on Skype there afterwards, okay?
Okay, so Brian, Bridgeton, Dave, and was it DC, and me and Toledo, we're signing off.
All right.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem. We've had a main beam plus undervolt. Roger, main beam undervolt. Okay, stand by, 13. We're looking at it.